A big thank you to all of my patrons for all the support. Thank you guys very much. If you want to support the channel on Patreon, I'll post it in the links below. For $1 a month, you get early access to my videos with no ads, and you'll be helping out the channel. There's other ways you can help too if you click the like or the subscribe button. That goes a long way to helping the channel grow. Thank you guys very much. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your Innkeeper, and today we'll be talking about the top 10 blast spells in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. In today's top 10, we're going to be discussing my top 10 AOE blast spells. That's area of effect blast spells. I do have a few rules for myself for this top 10. Number one, they cannot be concentration spells. That way, if you're concentrating on another spell, you're free to cast these at any time. Also, if you cast these, you should be able to cast a concentration spell the following round in order to continue manipulating the battlefield, or maybe cast another blast spell the next round. It must also have an area of effect of at least 5 feet, and it cannot designate a specific number of targets, although I am allowing spells that allow you to designate who is safe within the area of effect. All right, with all that said, let's go ahead and get started with number 10. At number 10, we have Ottiluke's Freezing Sphere. This is an evocation spell of 6th level, castable only by wizards. Holy cow, this thing has an amazing range of 300 feet. And that is the call to fame for this one. It does have another cool little feature, which we're going to get to. But basically, it's a 60-foot radius sphere. That's great. The blast spells, generally, the bigger the area of effect, the more creatures potentially that you'll be able to nail with the spell. It does 10d6 cold damage, which is not great. Cold damage is something that is highly resisted. It allows for a constitution saving throw, which, again, is not ideal. That's why it's number 10 on the list. Constitution saving throw is one of the most highly resisted saving throws in the game. So unfortunately, that does knock it down a few pegs. It does have a really cool feature though, where you can delay the blast for up to a minute. So you can hurl it or set it as a trap before it explodes. Kind of like a delayed blast fireball. It's pretty cool. I like that feature a lot. It can create some interesting tactics. In case you're running away, you set it down and run off until the enemies get there, and then it'll explode. So you just have to time it right is all. But very, very cool spell. Great range. Unfortunately, it is knocked back a few pegs because of the damage type and the saving throw type. At number 9, I have Circle of Death. This is a 6th level necromancy spell castable by sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. This one is also a pretty good range. It's 150 feet, not quite as big as Freezing Sphere, but 150 feet is, I think, good enough. It also blasts in a 60-foot radius, just like Freezing Sphere. 60-foot radius is huge. There's very few spells that have such a large area of effect. You can potentially nail, dozens and dozens of creatures if it lands right. Unfortunately, this spell also allows for a constitution saving throw for half, and it only deals 8d6 damage. Now, because of the area of effect, potentially you can hit a lot more creatures. So even though the 8d6 damage is kind of low, if you hit more creatures, that's a lot more damage that you're going to be doing in total as a whole. So that is why this one is still on the top 10 list. It also deals necrotic damage, which is better than cold damage by quite a large margin. And that's why this one is moved up just a little bit better than Freezing Sphere. They're both very close. They both deal great damage and have an amazing area of effect. Freezing Sphere has better range and that extra rider, but if you're going for blast damage, necrotic damage is going to be a little bit better than cold damage. Now, if you're watching my Sorcerer series, you will note that I put this spell as not recommended for sorcerers, and there's a reason for that. With such a large area effect of 60 feet, there are very few times where you'll actually take full advantage of that. Very few battles are that spread out where you're going to need such a large area of effect, and therefore it's a suboptimal blast spell. It's good in a wizard though, or a warlock, because they can have spells just sitting there and can afford to do that and pull it out whenever it's needed. Whereas a sorcerer has such limited amount of spells known that having just the one 6th level spell, let's say, be this one, it's probably not a great idea. So even though if you watch my Sorcerer series, I said I don't recommend it, it's because I don't recommend it for Sorcerers. But I think this is still a great blast spell for Warlocks and Wizards. At number 8, we have Thunderwave. This is a first level evocation spell, castable by Bards, Druids, Sorcerers, and Wizards. When you cast this spell, it affects a 15-foot cube in front of you and deals 2d8 thunder damage with a Constitution save for half, but it also pushes the enemies back 10 feet. Being able to push enemies back is really, really helpful for tactical advantage in a combat, and especially at lower levels when you get this spell, since it's a first level spell, this spell can be extremely impactful in a lot of combats. At number 7, I have Firestorm. This is a 7th level evocation spell castable by Clerics, Druids, and Sorcerers. This one is interesting. It's got 150-foot range, and basically you create a storm of fire made of pillars, and you can actually set these pillars wherever you want, which is really cool because you can put them in areas where your allies are going to be safe, but the enemies are still being hit by these pillars. It deals 7d10 fire damage with a save for half, and the saving throw is Dexterity, which is better than Constitution. Numbers 10, 9, and 8 all allowed for Constitution saving throw, which is not ideal. Dexterity is a more ideal saving throw, although it's still not the best one you want to target, but it's definitely better, which means you'll eke out a little bit more damage than with those other spells. At number 6, I have the iconic Fireball. This spell is a 3rd level evocation spell castable by Sorcerers and Wizards. Everybody knows this spell, 8d6 fire damage with a Dexterity save for half, 150-foot range. Great area of effect with a 20-foot radius sphere. Of course, there are spells that have a much bigger area of effect, but in general, a 20-foot radius is more than you'll ever need. Fireball is a great blast spell. It does a lot of damage for its level and hits a pretty big area of effect for its level. So it definitely belongs in this top 10 list. It is the iconic blast spell, but not the best blast spell. Especially as you get to higher levels, there are definitely better options. But at the level where you can get it, it's probably one of the best blast spells you're going to be able to get. At number 5, we have Sunburst. This is an 8th level evocation spell castable by Sorcerers and Wizards and Druids, actually. This one's interesting. It deals quite a bit of radiant damage. It's 12d6 radiant damage in a 60-foot sphere, a huge area of effect, a large amount of damage. It allows for a Constitution saving throw, unfortunately, which is, again, not ideal, but the fact that it deals radiant damage is amazing. And there's a secondary effect. If the creatures fail their saving throw, they're blinded for a minute, and they get to save at the end of each turn to remove the blindness. Now, what's great about this spell is the radiant damage. I understand that it's a Constitution saving throw, and I understand that an upcast Fireball probably does close to this, but the radiant damage cannot be understated. It, in my opinion, the best damage type in the game, very rarely resisted, but also a lot of creatures can't regenerate when they're hit by radiant damage. A lot of creatures suffer ill effects when they're hit by radiant damage. Some take double damage from radiant damage. It's just a lot of extra things that happen to a lot of creatures when you hit them with radiant, especially the regenerating factor, because if a creature regenerates 20 hit points per round, that's 20 additional damage effectively that you dealt to them if you think about it, because that's 20 hit points they're not getting, therefore you did 20 more points of damage. That's why this spell is above Fireball. At number 4, I have Erupting Earth. This is a 3rd level transmutation spell castable by Druids, Sorcerers, and Wizards. This is one of my favorite blast spells in the game. I understand at 3rd level it doesn't deal as much as, say, a Fireball, but there are several things that I really like about it. It only deals 3d12 bludgeoning damage with a save for Dexterity for half. Not a whole lot of damage, but it does upscale very well. Each level that you upcast it is an additional d12, and a sorcerer with empowered spell can really take advantage of this. Not just that, even though the area of effect is smaller at a 20-foot cube, the added effect of creating difficult terrain permanently is amazing. You don't have to concentrate on that. It can really slow creatures down. So not only are you dealing great damage, but you're slowing creatures down and controlling the battlefield without needing to concentrate. So you can stack a concentration spell on top of this to really slow the creatures down or manipulate the battlefield to your liking. I really like this spell a lot, especially as you upcast it to higher levels. I would say probably the biggest drawback for this one is the fact that you can't target flying creatures with it, which is very unfortunate. So as you get to higher levels, you will be fighting creatures with other movement capabilities such as flying and climbing walls, and you're not going to be really able to nail them with this spell, unfortunately. At number 3, we have our very first Paladin spell on the top 10 list, Destructive Wave. This spell is amazing. It's a 5th level spell, evocation, castable only by Paladins. Basically, you create divine energy that ripples out from you as a center point, and it goes out in a 30-foot range around you. So basically, it's a 30-foot radius. Creatures get to make a Constitution saving throw, which is not ideal, but they take a ton of damage. 5d6 thunder, as well as 5d6 radiant damage. Both are damage types that are very, very seldom resisted, and radiant being one of the best damage types in the game, if not the best damage type in the game, in my opinion. So you're dealing a lot of damage, and even though it requires a Constitution saving throw, which is not ideal, it's still great damage types, which means you'll probably eke out a little more than you would than if you were dealing fire damage. Not only that, but you can change the radiant damage to necrotic if you so wish. Most of the time, I don't think that you're going to be doing that. I think you'll be doing radiant, but in case you need to, you can change it to necrotic damage. Plus, you can knock creatures prone, which is an added benefit that is a battlefield control benefit, automatically reducing their movement by half for the next round because they have to spend half their movement speed to stand up. That's an awesome ability. And the best part about this is that you can designate which creatures are safe. So within that 30-foot radius, if your allies are in there, there's no friendly fire. You can choose not to damage your allies and only hurt your foes and knock your foes back. What an awesome spell. Totally amazing. It's a spell that I think a lot of bards end up taking with their magical secrets because it's just that good. At number 2, we have Meteor Swarm. This is a 9th level evocation spell castable by sorcerers and wizards. It is the ultimate destruction spell. No other spell does as much damage as this spell. But when you hear number 1, you understand why this one is not number 1. Basically, it just hits a 40-foot radius area, and they get to make a dexterity saving throw, or they take a ton of damage. That's 20d6 fire and 20d6 bludgeoning damage. That is an amazing amount of damage, and they get to save for half. But even with half damage, you're still going to do a gazillion tons of damage. So unfortunately, this spell does allow for a dexterity saving throw, which is not the greatest saving throw. It's still okay, better than Constitution. And it deals fire and bludgeoning, which again, fire is not an ideal damage type, but the damage is so much that honestly, even if they succeed their save or they're resistant, they're still going to take quite a bit of damage. So a really great spell, decent area of effect, and the range is ridiculous at 1 mile. That is just insane. You can't even see as far as you can cast that. So what a great spell. And at number 1, we have Synaptic Static, my favorite blast spell in the game. 5th level spell. It's an enchantment spell, which is interesting. Castable by bard, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. And this is just really cool. A 20-foot radius area of effect. It's not huge, but this is the cool thing. First, creatures have to make an intelligence saving throw. This is the number 1 saving throw you want to target. Most creatures have horrendous intelligence saving throws. Even creatures that are very intelligent, unless they're wizards, probably have very poor intelligence saving throws as well. That is a really awesome saving throw to target. So more than likely, they're going to be taking damage. Then they're going to be taking psychic damage, which is a very seldom resisted damage. I think it's probably the 3rd best damage type in the game next to Radiant and Force, Thunder being a close 4th to this one. They take 8d6 Psychic, not bad, not as high as a Fireball, but because it's Psychic damage and because you're targeting an Intelligence saving throw, you will probably be dealing way more damage than a Fireball, so it's a deceptive number. Even though it's 8d6, just like Fireball, as a 5th level spell, 5th level Fireball would be doing 10d6, I believe. You're still going to deal more with this one because of the damage type and the saving throw that you're targeting. So that's something that a lot of people don't keep in mind. It's not just about the number of dice. It's about damage type and saving throw type. But even better, without concentrating, you're affecting creatures for up to a minute, which basically they are debuffed. They're going to be subtracting a d6 from attack rolls, ability checks, and constitution saving throws to to save for concentration. It's just an amazing debuff, an amazing blast spell. So you did a ton of damage, and even if the creatures survive, now they're debuffed tremendously when fighting your allies. And the best part is you can cast a concentration spell the following round, or any other spell the following round, and still have that debuff on them with no chance of it ending unless they succeed their saving throw every round. So this is the perfect blast spell. I think that every aspect of it is fantastic. Maybe the area of effect could have been a little bit bigger, but other than that, I think that you can't go wrong with a spell like Synaptic Static, my number one favorite blast spell in the game. And that does it for my top 10 list on blast area of effect blast spells. Let me know what you guys think. I'm curious to see what your top 10 lists on blast spells is. Remember the rules that I set in the beginning, just so I can see what your thoughts are on these particular types of spells and see what your list looks like and if you agree or disagree with me. All right, guys, thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments down below. And as always, I'm your innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then.